All right, let's get right into it. For a long time, the boogeyman in cybersecurity was the zero-day threat. But in late 2025, the whole game just shifted. The gap between a bug being announced and an exploit showing up in the wild, it collapsed. We went from days or weeks to hours, sometimes even minutes. We are now living in the age of the zero-hour exploit, and today we're going to break down what that really means by looking at the threats that shook up December of 2025.
And look, this isn't just some abstract idea. This right here is a direct quote from Amazon Web Services. They're on the front lines, and their global network of sensors saw threat actors turning vulnerability announcements into actual weapons almost instantly. This statement from AWS really sets the stage. It confirms that the moment a flaw becomes public knowledge, the race is on, and the defenders are already playing catch-up.
And this number, wow. This really shows you the scale of the problem, 32.1%. That's the chunk of known exploited vulnerabilities that were turned into weapons on or even before the day they were publicly disclosed. Just let that sink in for a second. Nearly a third of the really bad bugs were already being used in active attacks by the time most security teams even got the morning coffee in the security bulletin. Your traditional weekly patch cycle, it's fundamentally broken.
So how did this actually look in the real world? Well, in December 2025, three massive vulnerabilities really drove this new reality home. We're going to look at them as attacks on three totally different fronts of our digital lives: the modern web, the corporate network, and yeah, even our personal phones.
First up, React to Shell. And this was an absolute bombshell. We're talking about a critical flaw in one of the most popular web frameworks on the entire planet. The really scary words here are unauthenticated remote code execution. That means a complete stranger, with no password and no special access, could just send a malicious message over the internet and take total control of a web server. This was a direct threat to literally millions of websites.
So while the web was on fire with React to Shell, the second vulnerability was aimed right at the heart of the enterprise. You know WSUS, right? Windows Server Update Services? It's the central command post that companies use to push out Microsoft patches. This flaw let an attacker, again with no credentials, take it over with system privileges, the highest level there is. A compromised WSUS server is a true nightmare. You could use it to push malware disguised as a security update to every single computer in the company.
And finally, the battle came to our personal devices. This pair of 0 days in Android was a bit different. This wasn't a widespread spray and pray kind of attack. Instead, these were used in very limited, very targeted campaigns. The goal was to get inside a specific device, gain more power, what we call privilege escalation, and then just start siphoning off sensitive data. It was a stark reminder that even the phones in our pockets are high-value targets.
Okay, so we've got three huge vulnerabilities hitting three different areas. You'd be forgiven for thinking they were just separate, unrelated bits of bad luck, but they weren't. In fact, the two most devastating of these, React to Shell and the WSUS bug, didn't just have a similar impact, they shared the exact same deeply dangerous design flaw at their core. The culprit's name is insecure deserialization. Now that sounds complicated, but I love this analogy. Think of an airport getting a package. Deserialization is just the act of reading the label and opening the box. But insecure deserialization, that's like the airport just trusting the label that says harmless teddy bears without ever putting the box through an X-ray scanner. An attacker can write whatever they want on the label, but put a bomb inside and the system just lets it right through.
And this just lays it out plain as day. Look at this comparison. Root cause? The same. Impact? Remote code execution for both. Authentication needed? Nope. It's the same fundamental mistake made in two completely different ecosystems, one in the brand new cutting-edge React Flight protocol and the other in the old-school .NET binary formatter. It just goes to show this is a universal problem.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. As Martin Zugek over at Bitdefender points out here, we are not talking about some obscure minor type of bug. Security experts have been shouting from the rooftops about the dangers of insecure deserialization for years. Why? Because when this goes wrong, it's almost never a small problem. It's usually game over, complete system takeover.
So with these monster bugs out in the wild and being actively used, how did the authorities respond? Well, this brings us to one of the most important tools a defender has, CISA's known exploited vulnerabilities catalog, what everyone calls the KEV. When a bug lands on this list, it's basically the US government sounding a giant air raid siren and telling everyone to patch it, now. And the timeline from that December just shows how insanely fast everything was moving. On December 2nd, boom, the Android 0 days are on the list. Just 3 days later, on the 5th, React 2 shell gets added because attacks are already widespread. And then CISA drops the hammer, setting a hard deadline of December 26th for federal agencies to get it fixed. The pace here is just relentless.
All right, so we've looked at the threat, we've found the root cause, we've seen the official response. Now for the most important question. What do we actually do about it? How do you build a defense that can survive in this new zero-hour world? Let's start with the immediate tactical stuff. For these specific threats, the actions are crystal clear, and they are not optional. For React 2 shell, you have to upgrade your libraries to the patched versions, period. For the WSUS flaw, apply Microsoft's emergency update and, this part is absolutely crucial, block those ports from the internet. And for Android, get those December security updates pushed out to your devices right away.
But just patching these holes isn't enough. We have to think bigger, more strategically. First, you need a proven, tested emergency patching process that can get critical fixes deployed in under 24 hours. Second, you have to contain the blast radius. You have to assume you will get breached, so use network segmentation to stop an attacker from moving around freely once they're inside. And third, you have to accelerate your move to zero trust. The days of trusting something just because it's on the network are over. Verify everything every single time. And all of this leaves us with one last, really big question. For decades, we've thought about security in terms of quarterly plans and annual reviews. But if the time from a bug announcement to a full-blown crisis is now measured in hours, is that entire model obsolete? Everything we saw in December 2025 suggests the answer is a clear and simple yes. In this new world, being agile and resilient isn't just a nice-to-have, it's the only way you're going to survive.